So yes, I agree with a lot of people who believe that our president is an astute politician, and indeed he is. For somebody who grew through the ranks from opposition and found himself on the right of the seat of power, is definitely a good politician. But how about governance? I think governance has to be balanced with politicking. I mean, the base of politicking should be governance. Governance should be at the core of politicking. So all political decisions should be tailored towards improvement in governance. Anything other than that will be negative politicking that continues to, if you like, demarcate or delegitimize democracy and the very concept of electoral democracy, which is now a conversation across the African continent. And for somebody who is quite eager, who is a champion of democracy, I believe he should have made the difference. And I'm talking about President Bola Tinubu, who has a reputation and antecedent of fighting for the instrument of democracy in Nigeria. I had expected him to make that difference when he got the opportunity finally, after seeing it all. That's something he has not done. Nigeria is not where it used to be. I had, admonished all of them that they contested the 2023 election to say, look, whoever wins this election, you have a very tough task ahead of you. And the first thing will be for the president of Nigeria, of course, leading the pack of Nigeria's political establishment, to take the conscious and deliberate step towards committing class suicide. And committing class suicide here simply means it's like becoming a born again. It's like putting or prioritizing national interest over and above personal, sectional, and partisan interest, and uphold the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and pay absolute fidelity to the Constitution. That has not been done so far because the operators of the system currently are still in the mode of the old order, while Nigeria naturally has moved on with time within the confines of the Committee of International Nation States. And so that is the problem we are facing today. So that refusal or that indecision to take deliberate steps towards committing class suicide by the president and, of course, the entire political class in Nigeria is at the very root of our current existential crisis. I still believe that the policy that has thrown Nigeria into a bottomless pit of economic disorder, economic hopelessness, are the twin policies of more subsidy on petrol and the flotation of the naira. Because like I said earlier, there comes a time in the life of every nation when the elite will rise up and say, look, through an elite consensus to say, enough is enough. In our own self-enlightened interest, let's begin to do the right thing. When you have a fringe candidate, I call him fringe like Peter Obi, who claims and who says he doesn't give shishi, but is having this level of following, it tells you that Nigerians actually want good governance. And Nigerians are ready to follow any leader that leads by example. It is cheaper for the president to adopt the route of good governance to re-election than relying on structure that is very expensive to maintain and run. That is the class that I'm talking about. Look, it's a matter of taking the plunge. So I do not know, sitting right here, whether or not we'll win the election, but a lot of odds are stacked against him because for me, the president is going to the next election with a heavy overburden of incumbency disadvantage arising from underperformance and delivery of good governance for the people of Nigeria in the last 2 years. In fact, he has left Nigerians worse than he made them in 2 years. Something has to be done about that. And that's why the race for 2027 is starting early. So early in the day that people cannot wait to see a change of government. It boils down to the issue of committing class suicide. You know what that means? Prioritizing national interest over personal, partisan, religious, and sectional interest. That is, you don't have to like somebody to say the truth about the person. You don't have to love somebody to lie about the person. So simply state it as it is. Because you're not doing it for a political party or for the candidate of a political party. You are doing it for the nation. We need to maneuver our politics away from what it is now to what it ought to be in a democracy. You see, democracy is the best form of government. But because our politics in Nigeria has not been productive enough to enable democracy to yield dividends for the people in form of improved welfare and security. So people are beginning to question the very essence of democracy in the developmental achievements or trajectory of Nigeria.
We're seeing students in schools, celebrating. Bayo Nanuga put up the one for my alumni at Ahmadu Bello University, where some students were celebrating. Is that a success?
Definitely not a success.
If someone is more interested in politics than governance, then aren't we left with that, with harassing you, with losing us until you pander to us?
I think that for me is an elite arrangement from northern Nigeria. You see, what affects the man in Karabuda affects the other man in Yenogwa. What affects a man in Birnin Kebbi affects the man in Maiduguri, Indonesia, and other parts of Nigeria. We are one country, and you can't develop any part of Nigeria along sectional lines. However, on the other point about whether is the fear of losing the North also comes with an entitlement mentality on the part of the northern elite, who are used to power and who we have observed over time are always making this attempt to take power from the south whenever a southerner is in power. Now, for me, that's another factor. But the real factor here is, if you are strong on your game on delivery of good governance to the people, that in itself will not succeed. But the problem the president is having is, right now, he has not been able to deliver, he has not been able to improve the lives of Nigerians in terms of welfare, and also improve the security of lives and properties in Nigeria across the board. So there is a groundswell of opposition, both from the north and the south, against not just the president, but the establishment and the status quo. I had expected the president, having experienced a defeat in his own home state in his bid to become president, to realize that the whatever methodology he deployed to lead Lagos State wasn't working, wasn't acceptable in Lagos, and is not likely to be acceptable in Nigeria. But again, that consciousness appears not to have been there. I think he's set in his ways, and is continuously trying to follow a path that he's used to. And that is why he's facing this kind of resistance. The greatest danger the president faces going into the 2027 election, the greatest risk, is not even in the north, it's only the south. One would expect that at a time that the president is facing this level of opposition from the north, the ADC coalition, for example, is dominant in the north. Some of his former friends turned foes are the leading lights or the forces behind the ADC coalition. One would have expected that a southern solidarity, a unity across the south, as we witnessed between 1999 and 2007 under the Obasanjo administration, would have been used to actually negotiate a return to power. Because for me as a Nigerian, within this establishment arrangement, I believe that zoning is imperative, and that Southern presidency for 8 years between 2023 is sacrosanct. And that if Tinubu is going to be replaced by anybody, it should be a Southerner.
Not a Northerner.
Not a Northerner. However, the greatest risk, the greatest danger posed to that sacrosanct Southern presidency that some of us stand on the basis of principle is the president, his supporters, as one of those who claim to be supporting him, their diverse activities across the south that has now triggered the tribal war in southern Nigeria between the Igbos and the Yorubas is the greatest danger, is the greatest risk to his presidency. I'm not even opposition from the north, and nobody seems to be talking about that. Buhari's 12 million vote has dissipated even before he died.
Even before he died?
If you needed to see the level of, I don't want to put it now, mockery and jubilation in some quarters in the Muslim north when the former president died. Because for 8 years, they consider his rule as a waste of time and an investment that did not yield. I'm talking about emotional, material.
It's been curated for us as though he has this cult personality and this cult following.
It dissipated. And that was why he couldn't deliver his own state to his party in the presidential election. So that has dissipated. Somebody else will have to come up and probably captivate the imagination of the region enough to have such following. So anybody that is trying to appeal to a region based on a legacy of somebody who's gone now is not being realistic. And I have told that the president, me and an astute politician, should have known better. If, for instance, the Southeast decides to say, look,
she said, yes,
we are being suffocated
or the norm is
by our southern brother who's in power now,
every
and try to align with the North.
In the National Assembly, we are supposed to share the money.
Our president can be returned, so there's another means of electing a president.
The money is usually shared. I, as the chairperson, I will take a part of it. I will give some to my deputy, and the rest of the money will be shared amongst the staff of the local content committee. And I was like, did you say that is what happens? She said, yes, that is what my predecessor did, and that is what happens in all the committees in the National Assembly. I said, well, you know what? That money, if it's meant to service the operations of the committee, it's not meant to enrich my pockets, it's not meant to enrich the pockets of the staff, I would not want to collect this so-called imprest. So I would advise that you keep that money in the account and we build the money, we use it for whatever it's needed. If we have to buy office equipment, print stationaries, then we use that money. And I promise this, and the bank statement is here. It's an account under the name Senate Committee on Local Content, and the account is with Sterling Bank, and the account number is 00662082209. And when I resumed as chair of the committee, the account balance was 0. And then gradually, at the time I handed over to the next chairman, the account had 13,649,335 naira and 4 kobo. Anyone who has access to it, I have called the account number. You can check. We have gradually built the account. Basically, the money, I never took a kobo out of that in the name of imprest. I never gave my deputy then, who is Senator Ede Dafinone, any imprest. He can verify and attest to that. Neither did I allow any of the staff to take any money because that is taxpayers' money and the money was meant to service the office. Oh, but by the way, it would impress you to know that ever since I left office, the money has been withdrawn by the clerk. About 5 million was withdrawn. And 2 days after my removal again, 4.9 million was withdrawn. So as at today, the bank, that account that had 13 million has only 123,000.
All the atrocities that are being committed in the National Assembly, who punished them? We don't follow the budget process the way it is. They will budget money for instance, staff budget, money for training, money for clinic, money for sports, money for books, money. They collapse it. It is in the National Assembly I say hearing about collapse. What is collapse? Sir, both of you know what collapse is. Collapse. The money, now, allowances that are budgeted for National Assembly staff is collapsed. So, we as citizens, because we are still citizens, first, before we became National Assembly staff, and then you have no power to even go and hold a press conference because we are sworn to oath of silence. So I can't even tell the world how I feel. Allowances that we are constitutionally, even, I put it in the Constitution this time, statutory allocation to the National Assembly staff, they collapsed it till now. Some people have retired. It takes over a year, 2 years for them to pay the National Assembly staff their retirement benefit before you start talking of pension. Go and see them. They look like scarecrows. Our former colleagues call us, direct us to beg for money for fuel. They are coming to the National Assembly. You see them standing at the junction into the National Assembly. They can't afford to fuel their cars. So apart from what the Constitution says, themselves, who is looking at the one they are collapsing and chopping? They chop their own, they chop our own. We are talking about oversight. How do you account for the fact that the flight ticket to go and oversight somebody was paid for that person by the agency? What are you coming to write? You go there, they tell you what to write, they give you money, they quarter you, they give you flight, and the members will come and fight over the money that they gave to them. They will not give the clerk. They will not give the committee assistants that they take with. But it's not even the fact that they didn't give the clerk. Now you are compelled to write a report of what you did not see, what did not happen, and you lie. Me as a Catholic, I will just go for confession first. We did a public hearing last year, and then the committee called me to tell me that a consultant was employed to write a report. And then I asked the consultant, were you at the public hearing? He said, no. So what do you want to write? I, Ifoma, will give you material to write the report. I said, no, it's not going to happen. I will not work with you. I put my feet down and I told him I'm not going to work with you. And I sat down because they are looking at us as if we do not have capacity. Me, I am I'm just 2 steps out of National Assembly for retirement. So right now, my mother says she's not dancing so that people will give her money. It's so that they will see me. So I will say what I want to say. I sat down and I did a proper report of that public hearing, and I took it to the chairman. I said, this is the report. And they were looking at me like, you mean it? I said, yes. Oh, no, you have to change it. I said, no, this is what happened. If you want to change it, you now go ahead and change it. But the original report is in my system. I don't use secretaries. I type my report myself. So if they want to change it, they should go ahead and change it. I am waiting.
The National Assembly is a den of corruption by a gang of unarmed robbers. The National Assembly cabal of today is worse than any cabal that anybody may find anywhere in our national governance system, ganging up to intimidate and threaten the life of whistleblower is deplorable and undemocratic. Once when I was president, I asked outside auditors, both normal and forensic, to audit the account of the National Assembly. They frustrated it on the basis of separation of power. They claimed they had oversight responsibility for their corruption and nothing can be done. It is like asking a thief to watch over himself. Members of the National Assembly pay themselves allowances for staff and offices they do not have or maintain. Once you are a member, you are co-opted and your mouth is stuffed with rottenness and corruption that you cannot opt out. What of the so-called constituency projects, which is a veritable source of corruption? These constituency projects are spread over the budget for members of the National Assembly, for which they are the initiator and the contractor directly or by proxy. And money will be fully drawn, with the project only partially executed or not executed at all.
If people perceive that the elections of 2027 will be violent, they will simply not come out in the election. And that gives birth to voter apathy, which is also another very massive ingredient for rigging an election. So if we understand this, you'll see that we need to counter that psychological warfare. We need to counter this impunity with legal actions. When I say legal actions, not necessarily lawsuit, actions that are backed by law. And number one of it is Peter Obi must write a petition to the IGP, Inspector General of Police, to the Nigerian police. He must write it. This is not about whether or not the IGP will do something or not do anything. It is very likely, as we have seen now, the IGP, the police, DSS, security agencies have been silent. Normally, if this were an opposition voice, they would have swung into action. It is after they have arrested the person that we will be hearing about it. But since it is their own person, it is becoming very clear that even the police is now partisan. But we cannot just leave it at that. We must prove it. We must test whether or not they will come out to say they are partisan. Then we will know we don't have a country. So simply writing a petition to the Inspector General of Police on this matter is a win. It is a deterrence. That's number one. Peter Obi, number two, must do a petition to the Code of Conduct Bureau and Tribunal. What the governor did, what the Edo APC chairman did, what the commissioner did, they are gross violations of the Constitution of Nigeria, and they are also gross violation of the Code of Conduct for public officers in Nigeria. And so, if Peter Obi lets this slide, yes, the Code of Conduct Tribunal is not a Father Christmas. They can't give what is not before it. Then it will simply mean that you have allowed impunity to grow wings, and very soon it will begin to fly roughshod all over us. So number 2, Peter Obi must do a petition to the Code of Conduct Bureau and institute a case at the Code of Conduct Tribunal against the governor. You see, right now, he has immunity. But you see, if his case is successful at the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Governor Monday Okpebholo can be banned from running for a second term. Now, even if he doesn't get that judgment, the simple fact that this case is brought to the Code of Conduct Tribunal is a win for Peter Obi and for democracy, and it will serve as a deterrence for impunity in Nigeria. That's number 2. Number 3, Peter Obi must approach the Federal High Court in Edo State to seek an enforcement of his fundamental human rights. We have seen what the governor said. It was a campaign-style rally, and in fact, it was a rally, a campaign rally. And the governor said what he said. Even though the governor, through his aide, has come out to say, oh, they quoted me out of context. Take that video as evidence and use it to file a fundamental rights enforcement action, even claiming damages against the governor. Even if nothing comes out of it, simply filing that fundamental rights action is a win. It will serve as deterrence to impunity in Nigeria. That's number 3. Number 4, they are doing all of this because of local government elections. And what the APC state chairman of Edo State did is a gross violation of provisions in the Electoral Act 2022. It is, in fact, electoral offense, and the punishments there are prescribed. So if Peter Obi allows this to slide, what the governor said, what the commissioner said, what the APC state chairman in Edo State said, it will be feeding impunity fat. It will be providing a fertile ground for successful rigging of elections, not only in Edo State, but in 2027. So Peter Obi, number 4, must approach INEC and file an official complaint against INEC for the actions of the APC state chairman in Edo State, so that he can also be banned. Number 5, this may sound far-fetched, but there is power of black and white, and we Nigerians must realize this. It may sound far-fetched, but Peter Obi can write an official protest letter calling on the Edo State House of Assembly to begin impeachment procedure against the governor of Edo State for gross violation of the Constitution. Yes, you may say nothing will come out of it, but it will be for the record. And the fact that Peter Obi simply writes that letter to the Edo State House of Assembly, pointing them in a direction that they don't want to turn their eye to, in the direction of the violation of the Constitution, which constitutes gross misconduct on the part of the governor of Edo State, that letter alone, simply writing it, will serve as a deterrence. And then, of course, if properly worded with the right prayers, this Edo State House of Assembly is bound to reply, and we will see where they will hide, because really, constitutionally speaking, legally speaking, there is nowhere for the governor to hide. Forget all of the explanation that is trying to pay. But you see, these 5 options, if engaged, simply engaging them, is a win for democracy. It will serve as deterrence to impunity in 2027. It will serve as deterrence to rigging in 2027. Again, let me remind you, the reason governors are decamping to the APC is to secure Tinubu's rigging protection in 2027. So if any candidate is serious about defeating Tinubu and getting sworn in, that candidate must plan to counter rigging, because defeating Tinubu is the easy thing. Getting sworn in, that is where the problem is. Peter Obi, in my opinion, defeated Tinubu in 2023. But is Peter Obi sworn in today? The answer is there for you and I to see. because we know who the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is. It is Tinubu. In fact, he has even bragged about it, that we can talk all we want. He is the president. He will preempt us. He has bragged about that when he was in Benue. And it's something he always says. So defeating Tinubu, that is the easy part. Even though that can only happen in a free and fair election. But you see, getting sworn in, that's where the difficult part is. And any candidate that will defeat Tinubu and be sworn in must plan for rigging. Not plan to join the rigging, because you cannot out-rig Tinubu. It is planning to prevent the rigging that candidates should focus on. And I say it again to Peter Obi and anybody who cares to listen. It doesn't matter whether there is a coalition, whether Peter Obi is in coalition or he gets the ticket for the coalition. Whether Peter Obi is in a coalition or Peter Obi acts alone, if the election of 2027 is rigged, Tinubu continues beyond 2027 as the president of Nigeria. There is nothing the coalition can do if it is planning to rig out Tinubu. You can't rig out Tinubu. The reason why 2015 happened was because you had a Jonathan that was willing to give some element of free hand to INEC to behave the way they wanted. That is not the case with Tinubu. In 2015, you had something that looked like free and fair election. The signs we are seeing does not indicate that 2027, Tinubu intends to allow INEC to conduct free and fair elections. So I say again, anybody seeking to counter and unseat Tinubu in 2027 through the ballot can only do so by planning to counter and stopping and totally eliminating rigging. And there are ways to do that. We have solutions. The solutions cannot be dependent on the people that are responsible for the rigging in the first place. This is why I am skeptical about electoral reforms. Because you don't expect an Akpabio. I don't know. Do you expect an Akpabio to reform himself out of power? Do you? We saw what they did before they even gave us the 2022 Electoral Act. In fact, it was direct primaries that was there. They manipulated it and put indirect and put consensus in there. So many things that they did. Because they didn't want to reform themselves out of power. The Electoral Act 2022 is supposed to be the Electoral Act 2018. But Buhari refused to sign it because he didn't want to reform himself out of power. After he has gotten his second term, he now allowed what we saw as the Electoral Act in 2022. So, with that in mind, do you really think that an Akpabio will want to reform himself out of power, or a Tinubu will want to reform himself out of power? Electoral Act is good. It is a way forward. But I say this, even if by some miracle the Electoral Act somehow passes and we have mandatory electronic transmission, collation of results from the polling unit straight to the website for all Nigerians to see in real time, even if you have that Electoral Act, do you trust that INEC will not come up with some magic, with some glitch? So if anybody is serious about countering rigging in 2027 and ensuring that the elections are free and fair and transparent, then there must be people-powered solution. That is where Project Eagle comes in. We must all unite behind Project Eagle. If not, it will be business as usual. They will rig us out and they will come crying, calling on international community that are actually the ones enabling the rigging behind the scenes. Calling on this, calling on that, whipping and saying all lies on judiciary. Judiciary is dead. Look, I don't want to cry after the 2027 elections. And so that is why I am talking about solutions that can prevent rigging. That is what any sane politician should be thinking about now. How do we prevent rigging? We have the solution. Project Eagle. People-powered, real-time election result monitoring. Collation, transmission from polling unit, real-time. Before INEC gets the time to rig, we have put the results out there. We have the right, the constitutional backing to do so. we as citizens may not have the right to declare a winner. Yes, only INEC has the power to declare a winner. But we as citizens of Nigeria, we have the right to collate the results that we collected from the polling unit and to present it to the public to see. We have that right. And that is why we came up and we have developed Election Watch. But we need polling unit marshals, at least 3 per polling unit, to volunteer to work this application and to make the election of 2027 really transparent. On top of that, we have Election Guard. Camp Guard, that will help us capture evidence. And then on top of that, we have Well Fund, we have Law Patrol, and then we have the best of them all, Abundance Party. So please, let's get serious about stopping election rigging. That is where our focus should be. We cannot allow impunity to go unanswered. The incidents with Edo State Governor and his aide and the APC state chairman in Edo State is a threat to free and fair election in 2027. I don't see now. I'm looking ahead. The same thing the governor of Benue did, the same thing Phyllis Monka did. If we do not respond through legally acceptable channels and means, more of this will come. And we may think that we are battling it in the social media, but you see, they are winning the psychological warfare for the hearts and minds of Nigeria. And that is where the real danger is. We must not allow it. Actions must be taken. The 5 options must be explored, must be explored by Peter Obi. And then join us to prevent rigging in 2027. Details are in the description below.